Welcome to our final edition of Brainstorms for this year. We really want to thank the people who made this possible, our wonderful staff and crew from Sycamore Studios in Plain City, Ohio. We couldn't have done this without them, and we couldn't have done it without the collaboration with the Overwatch Alliance Foundation. We really appreciate the gift that they gave us, the gift of coming into your home and trying again to bridge that civilian-military gap. We have really enjoyed this year, and we'll be continuing next year thanks to the Fred and June McMurray Foundation. So just get ready for what we're going to be doing in 2025. Today, we're going to be closing out our podcast with, I think, one of the most appropriate discussions to have here in the holiday season or the Christmas season, because I don't think, at least myself as a civilian, did not know the heartaches, the tension, the financial and social and family burdens that go along with being deployed, particularly at the holidays, but deployed and then coming back into the family unit. And we have an expert with us today. I'm really happy to introduce our Resurrecting Lives Foundation treasurer, Jodie Arreguin, whose husband is in the Ohio National Guard and just recently returned from deployment. And she'll be able to give us firsthand what the effects of some of that is on not just Jodie, but also her children and the friends and the wives and families of other people who are deployed. So without further hesitation, I'd like to welcome everybody again to our How to Survive the Holidays When You're a Civilian is Hard Enough. When you're a military family, it's at least 100 times harder. And I really want to thank Jodie for being here today. And why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself? Because you've got a very interesting life and you juggle so many things so patiently that I really do admire you, as I do, military spouses. It's a absolutely different profession, almost a vocation that you accept on top of your regular one. So let everybody know who you are.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. As Chrisanne mentioned, my name is Jodie Arreguin. My husband has been in the Army National Guard for 24 years, almost 25. Wow. So very long time. Has deployed in different types of situations. This most recent deployment was not combat. So that was, I thought would be more of a relief, but I think it actually just freed up more mind for why is he not here with me when I'm having such a hard time?
Right.
So that's my marriage. Met Rick through a mutual friend and learned about his service when my friend and I went to dinner and he mentioned that Rick was in Panama. This was, probably 16, 17 years ago.
Okay.
He was there for a few weeks doing, building schools, building clinics, doing lots of stuff that folks don't know the National Guard does.
That is amazing. And I mean, many of them have been deployed with the recent hurricanes as well. And I think that shows, that's a really good point, Jodie, to show, again, the civilian world, the communities, how much that we rely on them. So didn't mean to interrupt, but that was a great point.
Yeah, so much. In fact, shortly before I was expecting our first, he deployed locally. There was a heat wave and power was out, and they went around to houses to make sure elderly were okay, that they had water, that they were doing all right. And so it's, again, they deploy locally, they deploy overseas, kind of wherever you need to be, they're gonna be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So he recently had that deployment you were talking about, but explain a little bit, it was non-combat, but the world heated up.
Yes.
I mean, and if you could explain a little bit, what kind of angst do your children feel? Do you feel when you see that on the news and you're not really sure where he's going to be or what's going to go on?
Yeah, so much fear and concern. So this deployment, he was over in Jordan, which we thought, again, was going to be nice logistical, nice desk job deployment, so to speak, or he was going to be working on getting equipment to the troops that were out and about. He was really kind of organizing that. And like I said, nice desk job, 8 to 5 their time. Yeah. And then, October 7th happened. And, he sent me a message that, because our kind of code for when should I worry was, if you have to carry your gun every day, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to think you're fine.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that was kind of the code.
Yeah.
So he did send me a message. He said, hey, we had to get them out of storage because they don't always carry them around on base if they're not in a time of tension.
Right.
And so that was kind of like, oh, gosh, okay, it's getting close.
Yes.
He was at the closest U.S. base to Israel at the time. Okay. And so there was a lot of concern of, are they going to bring folks in? And they did. They brought up some people just in case things heated up, and they fairly quickly were able to go back to where they initially had been overseas. But there was a lot of concern in our minds of,
And it happens so quickly. I think that's the thing that people, right now we're in a world where peace and war are a few minutes away.
Right.
And again, with the conflicts that are going on there, and not to get into the politics of all that, because I don't understand it, nor do I follow it. But our Navy, our Army, our Marines, everybody, Air Force, everybody was called up. Mm-hmm. Coast Guard was involved because of the waterways, because of trying to get supplies and all of that. And an 8 to 5 desk job in a foreign land where anything can happen can never really be easy, you know, and never, ever predictable.
Right. And it quickly turned into not an 8 to 5. They were, like you said, lots of folks getting called in. So what equipment do we need to get over here? Right. Kind of that just in case scenario.
And what does that do to you at home? You touched on it just a little bit, but you are essentially a single parent then, for sure. And not only are you single parenting your children, but you're taking care of the home and the finances and everything. What does that kind of make you into almost a survivor mode as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Fake it till you make it. Don't let the kids know how concerned you are, because that's just going to amp up their angst. Yeah. So our son was 11. He heard some stuff at school, so he had a little more questions. 7-year-old, not so many, but her questions were the whole time he was gone anyway.
Yes.
And they did ask often, is Daddy safe? Is Daddy going to die? And those are really hard questions to answer, because I don't know the future, and I can say he's in a safe place, but the fact is he is overseas. He's in the Middle East.
And, that's something I think that you share with our first responders, our law enforcement, our firefighters, is Daddy. Those are not questions that the majority of children have to, our youth have enough to worry about.
Yeah.
But the majority do not worry about, is Daddy safe? Is Daddy going to come home today? Because of the fact that only 1% of our nation is even serving in the military. Right. And so many of the military members then go on to the first responders of firefighters or law enforcement. So that's a very interesting thing, I think, for people to hear. And how do you answer those questions?
Ooh, carefully.
Yes.
A lot of my answers were, well, Daddy is okay as of now. And if anything should happen, we have things in place. They asked a lot, what would happen if Daddy doesn't come home and something happens to you? What if something happens to you while Daddy's gone? So we had to kind of share, well, we have people in place that would take care of you, and you have grandmas and grandpas and people that would take you in and love you and raise you.
That's just so, amazing, even for me, who have been in this space, it's not something that everybody worries about. And the thing that strikes my mind is, your husband, so many spouses, husbands and wives, are serving in the same situation. What if you don't have an extended family? Right. What if your family is not? What if you are at a military base that is thousands of miles away from the nearest help? Are there not situations or benefits in place to bring people in there? I haven't found them yet. Have you?
No.
No.
Before a soldier deploys, they are required to have like a child plan in place, and they have to turn that in. So this is what's going to happen with the kids if something goes wrong. In our case, yes, I can deploy because my spouse is home to take care of the children. But there's also that plan of what happens in a case of emergency. Make sure those contacts are in place. Make sure those power of attorneys are in place. And all the wills and everything are taken care of, so that there's no question of what would happen to the family. And part of that is so the soldier doesn't worry what's going to happen. Right. But part of that is also just things do happen. They need to be prepared in case the worst does happen.
And there is none, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but is there any financial assistance? Like if you have somebody whose grandparents, for instance, are 1,000 miles away and it's an emergency, who pays for that airfare?
We do.
See,
yeah, there's none of that. I have some friends who had children while their spouses were deployed.
Oh, yes.
They have to pay. They can take leave they can take up to 2 weeks, I think, but they had to pay. So she had to pay for her husband to come from Kuwait back to Ohio and then back to Kuwait.
On, a salary of whatever, See, I think these are some of the things that we need as a community. all of us need to be concerned about this, and we need to do something about it. 2025 is going to be a big year. Like I said, we're going to have a new government for whatever it is. Mm-hmm. We're going to ask everybody to quit running for office and start running the country. And I think one of the first things that we have to do is to say, how do we take proper care? And this is something that I really even wasn't familiar with, and I really appreciate you for bringing it up. So there's emotional issues, there's financial issues. What about socially? How many, for instance, other children in your kids' schools had parents who were deployed who could understand what was going on, or teachers? Or
to my knowledge, none. I know while Rick was gone, the school had a drive around Thanksgiving of, hey, we're going to donate stuff to send over to this group of this family, this dad that's deployed.
Okay.
And I know they asked, is there anybody else that have deployed family members that would like to, let's get in on this? Like, what else can we send to whom?
Right.
And there was no one else that came forward. So I can't for sure say nobody else was deployed, but they at least didn't want to share that.
Right.
I think every district in Ohio has military kids.
Yeah.
Many don't know. Many have no idea. I know there's a group of Ohio military kids that can run that data for you. And I know they've gone to school districts and had a superintendent say, no, we don't have any military kids. He's like, well, you do. I can't share their names, but I'm telling you that you do.
Yeah.
So we're everywhere. The kids are everywhere.
Yes.
And they do just have a very different stress level
Yes.
with different things on their mind.
I would like to bring up, if it's okay with you, and if I'm wrong on this assessment, please let me know. I know that it's a feel-good story. At least that's how it's always stated on the nightly news. When a spouse comes back and surprises a child at school. And I'm going to get choked up even talking about this, because in my mind's eye, the desperation with which those children run to that parent and hold on to them for dear life and break down crying, that is not a feel-good moment. That is a moment like, oh my God, I didn't even know if you were coming back. I would like you as a parent to comment on what you see, because I'm not a parent. But what I see is, if somebody was away and our truckers are away, and many of our other folks have to fly away for conferences, or maybe they're working somewhere else for a month, it's not the same level of desperate welcome home.
True. Yeah. So our kids talked the whole time he was gone about wanting to be surprised at school.
Oh, really? Okay.
They very much wanted that. I didn't, for a lot of reasons. But one, I didn't want to disrupt school. I know it's very disruptive, and kind of the rest of the day, kids are going to be chattering and talking, and really was not planning to do that. His initial return date was over the weekend. So it was kind of, okay, don't have to worry about it. Don't even have to make that decision.
Right.
It got delayed by a few days. So we knew he'd be coming home on a Wednesday.
Okay.
So we let the school know, hey, he's going to be home. We're going to come pick up the kids and take them out for a day or two. Just, send homework home, whatever.
How long was he deployed?
He was gone for 10 months.
Yeah, that's a long,
very long time.
Right.
So we let them know we're going to take the kids out for a couple days. And their teachers reached out and said, we'd really like to get the classes together if you're okay with it. And I knew the kids were had been asking for this. So we did. We let them, they sort of made up an assignment where Miguel's 5th grade class and Elena's 1st grade class worked together. They kind of teamed up as buddies and wrote stories, and they finagled it so that our two were paired up together.
Okay, gotcha.
Had them at the front of the room presenting their story, and then Rick just kind of wandered in the back and took him a few seconds to see it. I will say it is an absolute desperation, but the joy in that moment, it's such an exciting reunion.
Yes.
And to see the other kids around, there were some, little kids crying, just, very excited for their classmates and their friends. And I watch it a lot. I videotaped it. I didn't, send it out to, I don't know how I'd feel if my kids were on those videos that go around Facebook or not. But
right.
I watch it quite often. If I'm having a bad day, I'll watch that and just remember the excitement and the joy and the happiness. And there were a lot of tears. My daughter didn't cry. 7-year-old didn't cry. Yes. My 11-year-old son and my 46-year-old husband, yes, they cried.
Yes.
And it was really a good moment for us. And I think it helps the other kids and other teachers know how much we gave up. It was a really, really difficult year.
An amazing lesson. So how good of you to share that and, make me feel a little bit better, because I just see that desperation and it just really yanks at my heart.
Such a moment of relief.
Yes, okay.
I think when you have your hands on them.
Yeah, I'll bet that's true.
Yeah. So it for us, it was very joyous.
So there are like 3 areas I'd love you to explain to our audience. Tell us a little bit. Here's a day. Your husband walks in, he's got this letter. Does it come with a letter or email now or whatever? What happens from the moment, he shares this information with you, and what do you guys have to do to get ready?
So it's typically announced for my husband being National Guard, it's a drill weekend. So they were told a drill weekend. We're scheduled. This is the date we're scheduled to be around this date when we'll be leaving.
Okay.
And then we go into planning mode. So you do plan your wills. You get all that updated. They always have notaries at the drill weekends, and you can come in and have your spouses done. The power of attorneys, they'll provide a lot of that to you. We had some lawyer friends that kind of wrote up a little more detail because typically they're a couple page long wills that are very boilerplate.
Yes.
So we got a little more detail on them, but they have notaries available for signatures.
Okay.
So kind of getting the paperwork in line is step one. We had to plan for logistics. So our kids are in a lot of activities.
Yes.
And there were a few times where I have to be somewhere, my daughter has to be somewhere, and my son has to be here somewhere all at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't drive 3 places at once.
Right.
We don't have family here in town. They're about an hour away.
Yeah.
So kind of getting those inroads in place with other hockey parents. My son plays hockey. So, hey, just a heads up, guys, this is what's going on. I might need to lean on you guys to help, come pick up my son and get him to hockey and help him tie his skates. So just kind of letting people know the different situations that might come up.
How was that received by the hockey
Very
person?
well.
That's
Very well.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, most people were absolutely willing to help. And it's surprising the people you think will be the most helpful
Or never.
you don't hear from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't hear from them. And then, the neighbor that you've waved at a few times becomes the person that I gotta run out kind of spur of the moment. Yeah, I'll watch the kids.
That is amazing. Yeah. And again, military families, first responder families kind of have that mindset that you are self-reliant anyhow.
Absolutely.
So that has to be a different thing for you too. Because I mean, we've worked together for a couple of years now, and I know you know where you have your finger on the pulse of where they are. And that is a different thing.
It's very different. Yeah. I mean, it is just, we are, at least me, you kind of say, well, we're Army strong.
Yes, right.
I don't need any help. I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm a military spouse. I can do this. And we can't do it alone. And it's a very hard to ask for help. It's extremely hard. Some of the most helpful things that people did, not just for me, but for other spouses were, don't just say, how can I help? Because we're going to say we're fine.
Right.
And we're not.
Exactly.
They would just show up with dinner or send a message and say, hey, we're bringing pizza over Friday. Just don't worry about dinner that night. I had one of the spouses had their friend reach out and say every other Friday, the whole time he's gone.
Oh, really?
You're having dinner. They had a sign up genius, so kind of all their friends pitched in. But every other Friday, dinner's handled. You don't have to worry about it. So it's that sort of thing.
And that's huge, isn't it?
Huge. Yes. Feeding picky kids and yourself, and then nutrition kind of goes out the window. It's what do we have time to get, especially when you've got 5 different practices to be at. You eat what you can, and squeeze it in. And we had a lot of Subway. I think we lived on drive-throughs a lot of times. I stopped going out to eat because it's really hard with 2 kids and just one adult. Because if one needs to go to the bathroom, who do you leave at the table? Who do you do you make?
And you've got boy girl, so you can't all go together, right?
Yeah, so we kind of stopped going out to eat. Just because logistically, again, it's hard.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then what happens? I think that it's important for people to know about your husband's employer and how they handle it. Because I have dealt with vets who have come back, and I know that the job security is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But if the job itself is eliminated, that becomes a whole different aspect.
Yeah.
So if you could talk a little bit about what happens with work and securing, I think your insurance changed and all sorts of things. If you could explain that, because that was news to me.
Yeah. So as far as protections for jobs and, you can't be evicted while you're deployed, there's a lot of protections in place that are great when they work. But if someone goes against that, it's going to take time. It's going to take money to get a lawyer and get that stuff rectified. It's very difficult to manage because on top of all that, let's say you come home and your job isn't there. You have no income. You have to try and find a lawyer, someone to fight that. And then, it takes time. It takes 6 months, a year to get that made right. And maybe you're going to get a financial settlement that will help. But in the meantime, you don't have income.
Right.
Or you have to find another job, which can be very difficult. Some employers are fabulous about it.
Yes.
I know I work at Cardinal Health, which is not where my husband works, but I know that they are able to make up salary difference. So if you make more at your civilian job
Right.
versus your military, they make up the difference for you. It's a huge company. They're able to do that.
That should be a gold standard, by the way.
Right,
that should be
right.
the gold standard. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
However, I mean, you've got, let's say a company that has 4 or 5 employees,
Right.
and all of a sudden one is gone. They don't have that luxury to do
Right.
that. They're not able to do that. And they also probably can't hold that job for a year. They're going to have someone fill it in. So then
Right.
it's kind of, how do you let someone know who would want to take that job if they know it's got a 10-month end date?
Right. Right.
I have one of the spouses, her husband came back and he has a job, but there was no like set time frame on you have to go back within a month. So he was off about 3 months with a job held for him, but unavailable for 3 months, and he didn't have income, and there was nothing they could do about that.
See, and that's just, again, there are all these loopholes
Yes.
that we need to know. And if there were more than 1% of the population serving, this would be a bigger issue. But with 1%, and I don't think it's that people would ever be against it. We just don't know. So
Right.
that's why I really appreciate, you're saying that. So you have all of these things going on. You had some health issues within your family
Yep.
while he was deployed, some health concerns for anybody going to that far away,
Right.
that far away from the medical care, the physicians that they know. If you could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'd never felt the sandwich generation more than I did
bet.
while he was gone. My father's health really turned. His parents needed some help, and of course the kids. So we were very much pulled in 15 different directions, and there's always that concern of how much do I share with the soldier. We kind of joke with the military spouse that the Murphy's deployment law, something big is going to break, and it's going to break fast. And it did. We had a shower leak. We had both of the cars, one which I didn't even drive very much. His car, I drove enough to keep it running. And so
Yes.
both had a flat tire at the same time. So I was like, okay, how do I get to the mechanic on a flat tire? It's just Murphy's Law. Something is going to go wrong, and it's going to be big and hard to deal with, and you're on your own. So it is, how much do you share? My husband can't help me with the shower leaking. I call the plumber. I have to, so do I want to concern him with that? Do I want to worry him with that?
I see.
And it's, I'm pretty independent. I always
You're very
was.
independent. Yes, exactly.
So it wasn't a concern for him. If I say, hey, the shower's leaking, I'm going to call our plumber, and he knows I can handle it. There's a lot of families that aren't like that, where the deployed spouse is the one that takes care of all the finances, that does all the calling. They know the plumber numbers. They know all of the mechanics. They know all the way to handle that. And, Rick and I are very much team, so I have all that information. But there's that concern. And I even had one of his commanders tell me once years ago, we just so rely on you guys to handle everything at home so they don't have to think about it. Which I was like, oh,
which is quote unquote, it's all on you.
Yes. It was like, well, I want him to know what's going on. I want him to know we're okay. But it was kind of, do I tell him the shower's leaking through the ceiling in the living room now or after I get it fixed?
Right.
How much do I want him to be focusing on that? How much of his brain do I want focused on stuff that he can't do anything about?
And to your point, when you had mentioned about one of the women whose husband was deployed, who was pregnant and delivering, she had to, your kids are at least 7 and 9, which is very, very busy. But you have a couple babies at home, a baby and a toddler, and you're pregnant. What?
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
Exactly. There should be places. There should be systems in place to come in and help with that.
Yes.
That we, as a community, as a nation, should be taking care of, I think.
They just recently instituted a program for drill weekend childcare.
Oh, whoa.
Which is, it's kind of an instant pilot stage. So there's not a ton of providers, but it's a weekend. So a daycare may want to help, but they're not staffed on a weekend. So it's kind of, who do you get involved in that? But to your point, while they're gone, we're on our own. It's kind of figure out. We had some spouses that did have to quit their job because loss of income. Maybe daycare was too expensive. They had to stay home.
Oh, whoa. So there's more loss of income.
Yeah. I know we had one woman who their only income was his deployment income, and it was very hard for them. Yeah. Very hard for them. And there are some folks that can help. I know, like, you can talk to your local AMVETS or VFW, and they will help out with a short term, $500 here and there, which is hugely helpful.
Right.
but it's also not like $500 a month. It's,
It's not sustainable.
Right. It's kind of for a one-time, catastrophic thing. So I was part of the FRG. I was part of the Family Readiness Group leadership.
Okay.
And what we do is kind of have that family reach out.
Yeah.
We had newsletters. We had events throughout the deployment of get the families together, just so you know you're not alone. Especially with National Guard, you're spread all over the state.
Right.
So you're not on a base.
Right.
You're not all in the same spot. So being part of that, we had people reach out to us and say, hey, we had one instance with a soldier reaching out. My daughter is with my ex and she's being evicted. I don't know what to do. And so we had to, what resources can we find to help either get that rent caught up, but it was very hard too because it was an ex-wife, so it wasn't a current.
Right, exactly.
But it was his daughter,
and it's the current daughter. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was kind of like, oh God, that's the kind of reach outs that we had coming to us.
That's so difficult.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, there's all of the other things that you just mentioned.
Yeah,
carrying the weight on your shoulders without really having the camaraderie of you're going to work and everybody else at work has the same thing going on.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
No.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. My boss was extremely supportive.
Oh,
my company was very supportive. They allowed the flex time because I've got to go to the bus stop when I'm not used to going to the bus stop and blocking my calendar for little half-hour pieces so I can get around where I need to be.
Yes.
Very flexible with that. Knows that I'm going to get the job done. I maybe hop back on 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed, make up that time. But that flexibility was key.
Well, I remember seeing emails from you, and I always felt so terrible even sending. I see the email response at 2 a.m. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, it wasn't that big. Jodie just, no, that's okay. It's my only time. I'm there. Oh, my goodness.
No, and honestly, I had trouble sleeping too. So it was kind of nice if I had something to do when I woke up in the middle of the night.
I'm sure.
To keep myself off from, doom scrolling on the news and seeing what all was going on.
Right, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what about when the spouse comes back? So you've been doing all this. You've been treading water. You've been in charge 100% because you had to be. What happens when they come back?
Ooh, it's rough. It's rough because I know we got a lot of advice and you kind of know a little bit what to expect.
Yes.
But it is just as big of an adjustment as when they left.
I'm sure that's true.
A lot of routines have changed.
Yes, right. Because they had to.
Yeah, they had to. Absolutely had to. And for Rick, he very much came back in, and we talked about it before he came home, but feeling he was afraid he'd feel he wasn't needed or he was in the way. And to be honest, a little bit, sometimes he was.
Yeah,
I mean, it was, we've got our morning routine down and you are cogging up the works here, buddy. Just you sit on the couch and let me get the kids off to school.
Yeah.
So it's very much, how do you get them back in to what they're doing every morning and every day and how they can be helpful without overwhelming them is really key too.
For sure.
Dropping it. A lot of people are like, oh, you can go on vacation for a week. Yeah, I could have. But then my husband, who hasn't had to deal with the school prep and all of the things of everyday life for 10 months, that's going to completely overwhelm him.
Right.
It's overwhelming when I was doing it every day.
Right.
So really finding a way to ease them back in. It's very easy to say, yep, you take the trash out. The bigger stuff, you have to kind of ease in. And I even told him when you came home, for the first week, just you're an observer.
Oh, that's
Don't get involved. Learn the new routines. Yeah. Consider yourself observer status. And we talked to the kids about it. Dad's going to be picking up the new routines, so you got to be patient. We had a code word. He could say, I need to go to Nevada. And that was the code, like, wow, this is too much for me. I need to go. We had the guest room.
I say, yeah.
That was Nevada.
I gotcha.
So he could go into Nevada, and it was quiet. No one was allowed in there. That was his sort of decompression space.
And that's so, you've handled that so well. That is really important. Some places wouldn't have the space or wouldn't have had, kind of your savvy having been in this world for all those years. So I'm sure that you're a great mentor for those who come thereafter. Wow.
Again, fake it till you make.
And then when we think about the compounding of the fact that if somebody had been in combat, had been injured, had a traumatic brain injury, had a concussion, all that, it's overwhelming the way that we discharge people from either a deployment or from the military, that there isn't a decompression system in place. And that's one of the things, as we talk about at our board meetings, since our foundation is writing the book about how to best, take care of a future for the veteran and their family when they deploy from the military. And these are some of the things that we'll be discussing thanks to you and brave spouses like yourself who have to do this and have learned by trial and error.
What works best. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the unit has 30, 60, 90-day check-ins. So you're kind of quote unquote off work for 3 months when you come back off the military duty, but you have those required check-ins and the whole group gets together. And that's great. That's more than they used to do.
Yeah.
And they give you all these resources. Here's numbers you can call. Here's counselors you can call or way to get in reach, but they don't mandate it. So again, you're in that mindset of we're tough, we're strong.
Exactly.
We don't need the help. So I don't know if you can force someone to therapy, but I feel like
it would be nice if that was a requirement for getting back. And, and again, just to talk about things that nobody knows and nobody talks about. And not every civilian behavioral health person knows what's going on in the military as well.
Yeah. Having the I found a great therapist while he was gone that had a military background. So she understood what I was going through. Having the kids talk to folks that would be hugely helpful. Again, we didn't have as much success with that. So they were coming to me with a lot, which is perfectly acceptable. I'm their mom. I want them to come to me.
Right.
But I didn't always have the right answers.
Right.
And having one of the reasons we did the family events was so those kids could talk to other kids that were going through the same thing that they were going through. And the Army spouse, we had a chat. We started a book club. We had a chat. We were texting, group chat 27 times a day. Just to check in on each other.
That's a wonderful thing. Again, keep your social group, together who understands what's going on. So if you could go back, and I don't want to bring back, bad memories by any memory, but so let's go back to last Christmas.
Yeah.
Because this is our Christmas special.
Yeah.
I'd love to have what things you noticed and what things our audience, our listeners can do to help other families in the same situation.
Yeah. Christmas was weird. It was very hard having him gone. It was, I think, 4:00 in the afternoon when we got up to open presents here. Where he was, it was 4:00 in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to get on a FaceTime call with him. Technology is great.
Okay.
We were able to stay in touch. It was still hard. It's like this little phone picture of a man sitting over there. And he couldn't see what the kids were opening. The kids are running around. I think it was harder for him to be on the phone than to just not have been there.
I'll bet that's true.
So it was weird. It was nice to see him, but it just kind of hammered home he's not here. We can see him, but it was weird.
And it's so short, right?
Very
no
short,
matter what it is, it's a short period of time you're able to.
Yeah. As for what people can do, mail is so important. That's important
to know. Okay.
to those that are away.
Okay.
Especially single soldiers, married folks with kids. We sent a couple packages a month, I think.
Oh,
it might have just been a drawing and maybe a T-shirt or something, but just to stay in touch. I think single soldiers don't get that connection from home. So if you don't know anyone deployed, you could the USO, you can reach out to the USO, Gold Star Mothers. There's a lot of groups that send packages throughout the year.
That's very good to know, right?
To help
I know
that
the Blue Star moms here in Ohio are just very, very good with that. Karen Stillwell, who taught me what a Blue Star mother was.
Yeah.
They do that. That's a really good thing to know, particularly with the holidays. And if you haven't sent it now, because this is our Christmas thing, it's never too late, right?
No.
I mean, you've got New Year's coming up, and I think
and truthfully, they get more stuff at holidays because it is on people's minds.
Okay,
but they need it throughout the year.
I gotcha. Okay, that is really very helpful. What about people in the neighborhood, or people at church, or people at school? Any suggestions for them?
Don't ask how you can help. Just do it. Hey, I'm going to swing by and take the kids to a movie so you can have a little time to yourself.
Okay.
I'm going to bring dinner. I'm going to, just don't ask how you can help because we're going to say, we're good, we're fine.
Yeah.
Just kind of pay attention.
Right. If there are things that you're doing for your own family, just assume and do it and just pick up. And I think that's really good because I do think there's a lot of people that would do that, but they don't want to interfere.
Right.
Or they don't. In the old days, i.e. back when I was growing up, people just normally did that. Neighborhoods, everybody knew each other. They knew the circumstances. They were helpful. And we were a village, I mean, everybody watched, but that's not where we are now. We need to create that village and to be bold in our own reaching out, to just do that. That's really very helpful.
And I think if you're a spouse too, it's okay to ask for help. That was a big lesson I had to learn. I cannot do this on my own.
Yeah. And that is so hard for you to do, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All of that is really good. Any last words you'd like to kind of say to everybody who may be seeing this, our military members, maybe a spouse is deployed now, the children and the civilian. This is all your kind of wrap up before my wrap up. And because you are the person who experienced it. And I know that you had some very major issues and tragedies when our National Guard deployed back home and what we can do. We all need to figure out what we can do to help make that.
Yeah. My last words, I guess, would say to the spouses or the families at home, don't be afraid to ask for help. Know that you are not alone. Know that people are likely thinking about you every day, praying for you. You may not hear it, but they are.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And just don't be afraid to ask for help. And for those around, excuse me.
That's okay. We're all dealing with a little upper respiratory here. It is the Christmas season. Okay.
Cold season.
Yeah.
Just offer the help.
Okay.
Offer the help.
Okay. Well, I really do appreciate your coming and opening up the story of your family. And you've been very generous with that and very helpful, I think, in talking to our audience. And so, my last plea to the audience is to really, let's all pay attention. Let's all think of one thing we're going to do this holiday season between, Christmas time and New Year and even beyond to help make things easier on our military members who may be deploying back home, our veterans, our National Guard, everybody within the community who has a different story than yours. And they're only 1% of us, so it should be easy for us to figure out what we can do to assist them. I'd also like everybody to pay attention to many of the things that Jodie brought up today, because we do need better legislation. We need better social services. We, as a civilian world with 99% of the resources, are being challenged and being charged with taking care of our military, who right now is literally taking care of the world. I mean, our military members are everywhere. They are deployed on a dime now. A lot of things happen in their homes as well. And so let's all be a little bit generous about that. And when I talk about the season for veterans, I will tell you we've been talking a lot about suicide prevention. The major amount of suicide calls that I get, suicide threats or suicide ideations. And again, I'm not a therapist at that. We don't encourage people to call me, but are between the time of right before Thanksgiving until after Valentine's Day. So please keep Valentine's Day in mind too. It is one of these great, national holidays that's really pressed by the greeting cards and chocolates and flowers and that. But if you have no one, and even more important, if you've lost a battle buddy or 2 or 3 or 30, like one young man that I just recently spoke to, it becomes a very desperate time. So let's see what we can do, this Christmas season, this New Year season, this Valentine's season, and let's turn over a new leaf in 2025. I really do believe that this is a time for our nation to come together, for our civilian world to come together, embrace the military, and let's all come up with solutions to keep our communities, therefore our nation, stronger. Thank you all. Have a very nice holiday.
If you are thinking about harming yourself or attempting suicide, tell someone who can help right away. Call 911 for emergency services. Go to the nearest hospital emergency room. Call or text 988 to connect with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This podcast is made possible thanks to a grant from the Overwatch Alliance, and it's produced by the Resurrecting Lives Foundation at the Sycamore Studio. Music is written, performed, and graciously provided by Tim Beckley. Remember, when you work toward brain injury recovery, it is best to journey with a friend and keep your gait steady and your spirit strong. Finally, always seek shelter from your storms.